because the top 1% does what you're talking about in a way that's better than anybody else, but it doesn't work out so well for them.
What do you mean better? They better than everybody else?
So they do what you're calling self-sabotage
Yeah.
in a way more effective way than the average person.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And not only that.
So if they're gonna self-sabotage, they do it. They go all out.
Exactly.
Do you want to earn more? Work less and enjoy what you do each day. It's no secret, it can be done. This podcast with Dr. T will not only educate and inspire you, it will also teach you how to do more and be more with the time you already have. It will be like a shot of adrenaline straight into the heart of your business. Here is your host, Tyson Franklin.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret with Dr. T. Now, with me today, I have someone by the name of Dr. K. It is Dr. Fern Kazlow, and she's from New York City. She's a clinical psychotherapist, which we will touch on and find out what that is. She's a speaker, author, and also a business and branding consultant, and also mentors high performers to live in the no doubt zone. And we're going to talk about how the no doubt zone applies to small business and entrepreneurs in general. So Dr. K, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm excited to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
First, I just want to touch on, I've heard the word clinical psychotherapist before, but I don't really know what that is. And I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but can you just explain that a little bit more?
I can. And it's interesting because clinical psychotherapy conjures up a lot of, there's something wrong with somebody, pathology, mental illness, mental health issues. That's the space that people, you say it and they start thinking about, are they bipolar? Are they this? Are they that? Do they have some kind of like pathological problem? And that's where clinical psychotherapy, we do study that. But the real thing about clinical psychotherapy, I'm not somebody who comes from a pathology model. What's valuable about it and what I bring into my work with business people is that if you've really studied clinical psychotherapy, you know how to work with people's resistance. And resistance is huge. It's where we create the obstacles from. It's the way we see the world is through our lens and through our resistance. So clinical psychotherapy is that place where we look at the mental health problems, the emotional problems, what I take out of it, and I still keep a psychotherapy practice as well as my business mentoring and consulting. What's so valuable is that my training has given me the ability to go very, very deep and the ability to not get caught up in people's trances, which are even more than, you'll hear people talk about, like, what's your story, or that's just your story or your belief system. Yeah. Trances are actually deeper. They're the place where you see the world through this very rigid lens and you don't see the rest of it, and we get really stuck. It's much easier to shift a story or a belief. Trances we're less likely to see, and we all know about the stage hypnotists going, making people cluck like a chicken. When we're in trance, we're kind of clucking like our own chicken, and we can't see it because we're in the trance. So what I do is I take from that model the ability to recognize trance, move people out of it, and use their resistance not as something negative, like, oh, you're resisting. That's the other thing we'll hear a lot is, oh, you're just being, resistant, or you're just resisting. There's so much gold in resistance. So for me, if we look at the way somebody is resisting and we try to understand why and how they do it, we've got the fuel to enable them to create whatever they want.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by resisting? When somebody is resisting, what is it they're resisting?
Okay, well, they can be resisting different things. So there's no formula. I never work from a formula.
Yeah.
But one of the things that people resist a lot, people talk about fear of failure. And much more frequently, and I know you know this from your work too, it's fear of success.
That makes sense.
Right, it's much more often like, can I be there? Can I be visible? I mean, there's a lot of other things. There are fears of being successful and going past your spouse or going past your brother or sister. There are fears that if you get very successful, your health won't be able to sustain it, or your relationships will be strained in some way, or you'll just be too busy. So we have different trance states and also beliefs that we've kind of brought in, and they're holding us back.
So it's not just a fear of failure. It's a fear
absolutely
of
not.
If I get successful, I won't be at home as much as I should be, or that I think I need to be, and therefore that builds up resistance to do the work that needs to be done.
So that's one. Absolutely. That's a very common example is I'm afraid I'll be too busy. I'm afraid my health won't sustain it. So it looks like a business problem, but it's actually a health problem. People come in and they don't think that their health is going to be robust enough, or they don't think their relationships or their self-esteem. It's an issue about self-esteem. On the other hand, you have things where people hold themselves back. For example, you could have a couple that is in a little bit, or sometimes not so little bit, of a struggle about who's going to be the biggest money earner.
Okay.
How much are you going to work? How much am I going to work? And so people get into these battles that they're not aware are actually impacting how successful they become. So there's so many different ways. It's, I'm not going to say it's all about fear of success. Some people really are afraid to fail. Some people are afraid that if they make a mistake, this is going to be a sin that's going to really derail them forever. I mean, it sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. People are terrified of that. So there's many different things. And the idea is that we want to get to the root. And that doesn't mean by sitting and analyzing it for 20 years. Okay, I'm all about action.
Yeah.
But it's looking at what is it that's impacting your ability? What's that resistance? What is it? And I always look for the positive. So people will say, oh, as I said, like, this is a negative thing, you're being resistant, or, you're just making up excuses for why you can't do that. And instead, if you can reframe it, turn it on its head and say, what positive reason do I have for doing that? If I'm not as productive as I think I should be, or as I want to be, or if something just is not going as well as I want it to be, what could be the positive reason that I'm kind of screwing up? It kind of can look like a screw up, but sometimes, in fact, usually it's a perfectly executed unconscious resistance or an unconscious behavior. So you want to look at those.
Yeah.
Okay?
So your background though, is your background psychology that got you into what you're doing now, or was it a different type of training?
Well, I'll tell you how I got into it. My background is both psychology and education, and I'm one of those rare people that pretty much my whole life knew that I wanted to do therapy. I didn't know that I wanted to apply it to the business arena, even though I always loved business. I've been an entrepreneur since I'm a kid. What got me into the realm of applying it to business was kind of fun, and that was that I had patients who were health professionals. They were doctors of different kinds. And I also had entrepreneurs in my practice, and they were there because they were depressed or anxious because they couldn't build their practice or their business.
Okay.
And so because I was really good at it, I built my psychotherapy practice very quickly. I had one of the first holistic integrative health and business centers in the country in New York City. I built that very quickly. I built a number of different businesses really fast, and I loved it. So what happened is that as I started to help them both work on their anxiety and their depression or whatever other issues they had that they came in through the psychotherapy door, I was also working with them on their business. And it became clear over time that when not only was that very powerful and people's lives got better and their businesses got better, and I loved doing it, but the other thing that became clear over time was that people who were just going in and offering people classes on how to build their business, how to build their, I don't think we were using the word brand back when I started, but basically what we call today their brand, their niche, that they were only getting successful to a point. So while you can't be one of those people that just talks about mindset and no action and no business plan, you need to do both. You need to come from the right mindset. You need to be who you need to be to create the success. You need the skills, the knowledge, the techniques to be successful in your business, and you need action. So what I saw was that you could take all of these courses and work with the, supposedly best coaches and mentors and take all kinds of, training, and you were still not getting where you wanted to be, or you'd get there for a while, but you didn't sustain it. Or you'd get there for a while, but you couldn't get to the next level. So I found that when you brought the two together and used an integrative approach that enabled people to evolve into who they needed to be to create that level of success, at the same time you worked on their business strategy, their marketing, their branding, the way they presented themselves as a speaker, all of those things, you had a really powerful combination. So I've kept a clinical practice for, I've never stopped that, but also for over 30 years, I've had a consulting business that took the methodology that I developed, I call it Kazlow methodology, and I brought that into the business arena as well.
Okay, so it's just like this also explains, like you were saying, a business person can start out in business and they might have some early success and everything's going great. Does this also explain self-sabotage, where they'll get to a certain level of success and for some reason it's almost like they flick a switch in their mind and they do everything they can to almost destroy their business because there's other things actually going on?
Okay, well, this is a really fun one for me, and it's one of the reasons that I focus on the top 1%, because the top 1% does what you're talking about in a way that's better than anybody else, but it doesn't work out so well for them. So
better in what way? What do you mean better? They better than everybody else?
So they do what you're calling self-sabotage.
Yeah.
In a way more effective way than the average person. Okay.
So if they're going to self-sabotage, they do it. They go all out.
Exactly. And they're also, one of the reasons that I love it is because of my training in psychotherapy. I don't go down the rabbit hole with them. One of the things that happens in, sadly, the majority of coaching is that if you're a 1%er, if you're a successful business person, entrepreneur, the things that got you there, now you're so good at that you actually bring the coach, the mentor, a therapist, if you're in a therapy session, you bring them into your world, so that instead of the coach or the mentor getting you out of the lens that's limiting you, you're so compelling and you hold on to it so tight because you have way more to lose than somebody who's less successful. So You've really got it. You've got the skills that got you to a certain point. You've got a lot to lose. Now you use them to hold on to that space for dear life. So what looks like self-sabotage really is not self-sabotage. It's really an attempt to not lose what you've got. And, as you know, you've got to grow. You've got to grow as a person. You've got to continually evolve to be the person who can have that next level of success or can have success across the board. It's not only about in business, but it's being able to have success throughout your life. And in the things that look like self-sabotage, we're usually fighting hard to maintain what we have, because the prospect of losing that, even if it's to get something bigger, there's no guarantee. That's scary. So that's why I say they're really better at it. And they use those skills to bring, it's almost like they get the coach or the mentor to go, look over here, let's look at this problem. Let's go down and really work on this, when the transformative issue is someplace else. And I'm not saying that you don't need to work on the problem they present. So if somebody comes into me and they say, I have a problem with converting leads, or I have a problem with my brand, or I have a problem with whatever they say, those things are real. And you have to address them. That's why being able to work on the business side and the personal side is so important. But if you do that and you're not looking at what's underneath it, then you're only going to get them to a certain point. I had somebody recently that what they were doing is they would get these really great positions, and they'd get to a certain point, and then they didn't understand why they didn't get chosen to be the major speaker, or they didn't get the next promotion. They really didn't understand how they were setting it up to make that happen.
Okay, so that, like if someone who's in the corporate world, they'll get to a certain level and they can never go to that next promotion. So then they leave the company, go somewhere else, and still can't can't get the next promotion. So they go to another company and they just keep repeating that process. There's something missing to go to that next step.
Exactly. And what people do is they look at it and they think that the person is either just, and I'm going to quote that word, just resistant, or they think the person is just sabotaging themselves. And they don't understand that the person is holding on very tight to success. And if you can help somebody get to the core of what's really going on, then as you shift that and they become that person who is the person who can hold that next position, not only do they know it, but they transmit it to the people whether it's corporate, whether it's entrepreneurial, whether it's in the speaking realm, it doesn't really matter. You start to transmit that. And it's not just a woo, you're transmitting it through the ethers. It's a very concrete, you hold yourself differently, you speak differently, You think differently, you come up with ideas that you didn't have before, and you become a person that's aligned with that position that you want to have.
My mind is just bouncing all over the place at the moment. I'm thinking of people that I know who are in the corporate world who I think have actually done that jump from place to place and never, there's always been, they get there, everything is fantastic. And then it's, whether it's 1, 2, 3 years later, all of a sudden everything about the business that they were saying was fantastic is now terrible. And then they jump to another place. But also when you mentioned about people, say, in the public speaking world or just in the business world, the entrepreneur sort of world, that they get to a certain level and they can never sort of just crush it. They never just take that next step.
Or they crush it and then they don't sustain it. So there's something that happens. And so when you look at that and you look at how clever you have to be to master that, like I know you are, we're very clever to master that. This is not an accident. This is not lack. This is really taking an incredible amount of know-how, but we're not using that know-how in the service of what we need it to be, not because we're not wanting to do well, but because we don't know how to get past that inner resistance, to get past the trances, to get past the seeming limitations, and to become who we need to be to create that. And it's a continual process. It doesn't stop. Every time we want to jump to another level of success, we've got to evolve to the person that's in alignment, that's congruent to that next step. And so it's, that's a little bit scary process to let go of what's been working, to do something that you want to do. Maybe you have a huge mission and you've been successful. A lot of people I work with, they've got a lot of success, but there's some dream that they've had. And even if everybody else looks at them and says, wow, you're really successful, they know in their heart that there's something else that they're here to do, and they haven't done it yet.
Okay. So, and I'll just go back a step. When I was talking about, like crushing it, and you said some people do crush it, but then they do it once and then they can never repeat that same levels of success again. And then that frustrates them. And it sort of reminds me like bands. Well, I have like how many bands have been one-hit wonders, and people go, what happened to them? They had that massive success and then nothing actually follows after that. But their music is very similar. Is that sort of same sort of thing happens with them? It's
interesting. In a conversation recently with a colleague, a very successful colleague who was a client of mine and is now in the process of closing a $46 million deal, I think.
Yeah.
We were just talking about how many people are accidental successes, meaning that there were things aligned for a certain amount of success, but they don't know how consciously to create it again. So they fell into it, things lined up for them. They were the who that could create it at that point, but they don't know how to do it consciously. So you were asking me about the no doubt zone. In the no doubt zone, that's a space where you're very clear. You're very connected with your intuition, with your market, with your team. You've got a lot of clarity. You've got connection. You're committed. Okay, you're seeing it through.
Yeah.
And you take consistent, congruent action. And it's a space where you're very tough, not in a, like I'm a tough guy, but you're emotionally tough. You're more than resilient. People talk about resilience, and resilience gets you to a point. It's the person who wants to triumph, who takes that seeming failure and says, okay, what am I going to do here? And they don't get into the loop of, all the things that don't happen. They are going to keep going until they figure it out. But it's not usually, they don't know how to do it consciously. It's one of the reasons that people need a mentor that not only is in the no doubt zone, but knows how to create it in others. A lot of times people go to somebody that's been successful, and yet they're not able to show other people how to do it or sustain it. And one of the problems that happens is that most people will look at, and this includes some of the best, quote unquote, best of the best coaches, is they will look at the world through what's worked for them.
Yeah.
And so they may be very successful with people that have similar issues or can work in a similar way, because the answer to the issue is very different for different people, but they don't know how to look deeply into that person. This is another place where the clinical psychotherapy thing comes in, because I know there's a word that we call transference, okay, that you may have heard, and it's where we bring our stuff into the interaction. And too many coaches, they think that because they're doing coaching, not therapy, it's not relevant.
Yeah.
it's actually more relevant because you've got less structure, less rules in the coaching than you do in the therapy arena. So the coach brings their stuff, their perspective, their lens, and they, for the best of intentions, bring that to the client. But the client is wired up differently. The client's resistance is different, core issues are different. Even if it looks like the same problem, it's different. And so what happens is they give them something that either works for a little bit or doesn't work at all. And it actually makes the client feel ultimately less hopeful and less empowered because they've tried so many things that haven't worked. And it creates that feeling of, try something else. Look at all the things that I've tried. But they've tried it from a perspective where somebody put a particular lens on them instead of teaching them how to develop a lens that's really out of the box, works with their intuition, and enables them to see expanded possibilities in a very powerful way.
Okay, so I just want to go back one step and then talk about that, what you're talking about coaching and that as well. Actually, I'll talk about the coaching first. Is this why, like, some people may have a coach and they're feeling like even more of a failure because they look at that coach that they've been extremely successful, but now the coach is trying to teach them the way that they learnt, and that isn't necessarily the best thing for them. They've got to look at it from more than just through their lens.
It's a big pet peeve. It's more than a pet peeve. It's a big issue to me because we're training people that this is okay. We're saying if you've been divorced, you can be a divorce coach. If you've had a kid with problems, you can be a parenting coach or a parenting of autistic kids coach. If you've always wanted to have a business, well, you could be a business coach.
Yeah.
If you're a therapist who couldn't build your practice, well, why don't you go and be a business coach? And it sounds ludicrous when we think about it like that, but people are getting encouraged to do that. Or even like you've lost weight, so now you can be a weight loss coach. That's one of the areas that we see it is such a big issue is we tell people to lose weight in the way that worked for the coach. Well, everybody is really different. So just what you said, it makes people feel worse. It makes them kind of give up about seeking help. And we're encouraging it because the coaches to the coaches are saying, that's okay. You don't need to be that experienced. You can be a step ahead if you've been divorced, if you've been through it. And it's not true. It's just not true. I'm not going to say they don't get any results or nobody moves at all, but they tend to move a little bit for a while or a lot for a short time. But they're not getting to what I call the transformative issue that enables them to take that learning and apply it as they continue to evolve and evolve and evolve into the who they need to be. And again, it's not the coach's fault. They haven't been trained for that. But they're being sold a bill of goods that they are then selling to their clients. And it's not doing anybody any favors because it is making people feel that they've tried and they failed instead of the fact that, it's like I'm in New York and if I tried to go to California by going east, I'm not getting there. I'm just not getting there. Now I'm going to get wet. Yeah, it's just not going to work. But, somebody that might have been east of where I wanted to go in California, they might have gone east. It might have worked for them. And we can laugh at some of those examples. And yet that's what we're seeing all over the place. We're seeing information that is so specific to the person. Sometimes it's even wrong. Sometimes it worked, but it didn't work for the reason the person thought it worked for. So, I'm a big proponent that you need to get a mentor. You need to get a coach if you want to get to a space that's really different. It's very hard to see our own stuck places. And one of the things that I love about the training that I had is that I was in the therapy world, we call it supervision. And generally, the first number of years that you're in practice, you have a supervisor that you bring your cases to. Now, because I grew super fast in building my practice because of my business proclivity, which you don't usually see in therapists, I actually had 4 supervisors every week. Okay, I did 4 supervision sessions a week. Was paying at that point way back like $1,200 to $1,600 every week, which seemed crazy, but it wasn't because I wanted to be ethical and really learn. So I had somebody who was also trained to keep, and even when you're trained, you don't do it 100%, but they were trained to keep their stuff out of it while they looked at what I was doing to see if I was keeping my stuff out and how I was really looking at that person's resistance from not my own transference, but from what they were actually presenting. And we don't have that in the coaching world. People get a certificate in a day, a week, 2 years, which is unusual, but you don't have ongoing training and coaching of the coaches, not in that real, roll up your sleeves and look at these aspects of what's going on. We've got marketing, we've got all kinds of things in the basics, and a lot of stuff going on to building your coaching practice, but we don't have people teaching how to get, how to work with your transference, how to work with your clients' transference, how to work with their resistance, and how to move people from where they are to where they want to be. And information doesn't change you. I'm not saying it's not helpful. It's really helpful because especially a lot of people that are entrepreneurs and business people, they want to understand things, but you can get stuck. I've always resisted just doing the, sell a course of information. What I do is I sell or I offer a process. And it's very customized and it's very individualized because information isn't going to change you, but learning how to shift your state from one that's holding you stuck to one that is the source of creativity and evolving that state and allowing you to take all of these great courses, and there's a lot of great courses, but to take that information and use it in your business so that you actually learn to write a Facebook ad that works. You actually learn to be a great copywriter and not only write great copy, but understand your market. If you've got some kind of brick and mortar business, you understand where the leaks are in your business. Where are the issues? Where are the problems?
Yeah.
So you need to have a process that covers the who you are, the information, the knowledge and the skills, and then the action. But it's not just about selling knowledge, and it's not just about telling people, and even this whole accountability thing. It's not about accountability except to yourself. It's about somebody that's going to be there who's been in the trenches and understands in a very deep way how to move you from where you are to where you want to be. And very few people can combine that. So it's a little bit, trickier, but there are ways of making it work. I mean, not everybody's going to come see me. There are ways to do that. While I work in private mentoring with a lot of high-end clients, it's expensive to work with me over the year. I'm looking at how I can offer things that will touch people, not just in giving them more information, but in ways that they can actually engage in a process that will facilitate a shift.
Yeah, well, we've got a mutual acquaintance, Sean D'Souza. I believe you know the he has the 3-month vacation podcast, and I can listen to him all day. And I met him down. We've been friends on Facebook for a while, and I met him down in Brisbane last year, and we're chatting away. And one thing I've picked up from him listening to him, and what you were saying then, and I can see the match, and I can tell why you guys probably think the same way, is he says the same thing. People are always just dumping information on people, but are they teaching them a skill? And he said whenever he puts together a course, he doesn't want you to just do the course and walk away with the information. He wants you to do the course and actually learn a skill that you can then apply the information that you're learning. Exactly.
And when you're getting that information, one of the other little things is that you feel like you're doing something. You feel like you're doing something. So it actually can take you further away from your goal because you say, wow, I worked for 2 hours today, like on my growth. Well, you worked for 2 hours getting information, but you didn't work on using the skills. You didn't work on the transformation. So for me, it's always that it's got to be both sides. You've got to become who you need to be effective at applying the skill, and you've got to apply the skill. So it's kind of an interesting dance and a challenge because you don't sit back and wait. I'm going to sit here and meditate till I'm transformed, and then I'll go out and do the skill.
Yeah.
So it has to be from both sides. You have to be working on becoming who you need to be while you're applying the skills, and you're going to keep shifting and adjusting and getting better and better and better if you're really in the game and not just in the game of, I'm going to just read more, I'm just going to listen more, and I'm just going to have all that information and pretend that's what I need to do.
So is it it's like a dance between consuming and creating?
It's exactly what it is. It's a dance between consuming and creating, and a dance between who you are, who you're evolving to be, and taking action. So you're taking action from where you are at the moment. And it's an interesting thing because as you're evolving, that's going to change the actions you take. And simply taking actions, if you're working towards this no doubt zone, towards this clarity, you're going to take actions that are actually going to then change who you are. So it's this very cool loop that works together.
Yeah, I think it's amazing where some people, you'll know that they are professional course takers or professional seminar attendees. They seem to be at absolutely everything, and then they don't actually create anything. They just seem to, I know they have a job, they have an income coming in, and it seems to be every second week they're at another course or another event, and you go, one day, I wonder if you're ever going to apply anything you're learning, or you're constantly just consuming, you're not really creating.
Somebody was posting about that today, and that's a place that it's such an interesting place, because it's easy to say, oh, they just take all these courses and they never create. And you weren't saying it with judgment, but I'm just saying that it's often people go to that place of judgment. They're just consuming, and they're never creating. And what people don't think about when they say that most of the time is that what's got them doing that is exactly the issue that they have to deal with to take the effective action. So that's the place that for me is really exciting. It's like you're doing this. Unfortunately, you're getting help to just do it. People are making a lot of money off of it, and people are encouraging you to take that next greatest course. But the thing that makes you do that is that issue, that resistance that's holding you in place. And so, you need somebody to say to you and to work with you and help you to understand why you're doing that and to do something different. But most people, when you say, just take action, it's like willpower. If you do something with willpower, it is eventually going to burn you out. It's going to exhaust you. People just say, just do it. And on the one hand, I get that. And I'm one of those people that can just do a lot of things. On the other hand, if you say, just do it, when somebody's got this really strong resistance, what you do is you make them either more resistant or they're fighting within themselves, and they end up crashing and burning. So what you need to do is help them create a base where they can move off the resistance into what they want, and then they're going to take action. It becomes a natural process. It's not going to be this struggle of like, oh, I don't want to do it. It's going to be something that is going to be a natural thing for them to do. Not every second, they're not going to love every single thing, but they're going to take the actions because they're now congruent with what they want instead of what they're afraid of or angry about. People talk about fear, but it's often anger or grief that holds you back too, not just fear.
I feel like we've been having a private therapy session here. So I always have one final question that I ask my guests. It's Monday morning, and you're about to go into work, and someone bumps into you, and they go, Dr. K, I've got a question. I'm about to go into my office. What's the one thing that what advice would you give me today as I walk in my office, open up the doors, walk in, greet my team? What's the one bit of advice you would tell me would be the best thing for me to do first thing Monday morning?
It's a great question, and I love the question because it's really what I tell people to do every day. Okay, every day you've got to look at what you're going to do, and that is what you're going to think, the beliefs you're going to nurture, the actions you're going to take, the way you're going to talk to other people. And you want to ask the question, is this going to bring me closer or further from who I am, who I want to be, and what I'm here to do? And that's not a Monday morning question only. It is a Monday morning question, but it's an everyday question.
It's a perfect
what
question.
I have planned today, is that going to bring me closer or further? And if it's not going to bring you closer, and that doesn't mean that you don't get a side job sometimes or something like that, because those things also will bring you closer. They're part of a bigger picture. But you've got to look at that question. Is this in alignment for me? Is it going to bring me closer? Is it going to bring me further? The way I'm talking to my team, the way I'm talking to myself. Now, nobody's going to be perfect, including me. I screw up. We all screw up. It's looking at that without judgment and taking 100% responsibility. And when you're not judging yourself, you're going to be freer to move. So you want to be discerning, but you don't want to be in judgment. And you want to ask that question, what I have planned on my plate for this week, this day, is that going to bring me closer or further from who I want to be and what I want to accomplish while I'm here on this earth, in this job, in whatever?
That is a perfect answer. Thank you very much for that. So I just want to let people know that if you want to track, if you want to trock.
You want to truck me down?
Oh my God. Okay, I'll start that again. If you want to track down Dr. K, Dr. K has a website. It's drkazlow.com, drkazlow.com. Go on there and check it out. I had a bit of a read through everything, and there's some really good information on your website. And I think if anyone's listened to this and they didn't get something out of it, like I normally say, they need to give themselves an uppercut and go back and listen to it again. Because if you got nothing from this, then you weren't actually listening. And Dr. K, thank you for being on It's No Secret with Dr. T. This has been fun, and like I said, it felt like it was a therapy session. Are there other ways for people to connect with you other than through your website, or that's how you like people to find you?
Absolutely, no, and that's an easy way. And if they, driving their car, doing whatever, and didn't copy down drkazlow.com, if you go to NoDoubtZone.com, it'll bring you to the same place.
No Doubt Zone, okay.
NoDoubtZone.com, easy to remember. You can connect with me on Twitter. You can connect with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I like engagement. I like process. So I don't want to have given you, just what we talked about. I don't want to have given you a whole bunch of information that you do nothing with.
Yeah.
I would love for the listeners to reach out to me. Send me an email. Go to my contact page. Really, really easy. Tell me what this stirred up for you. Tell me what you agreed with. Tell me what you didn't agree with. Tell me how you're going to use this to make a difference. If there's anybody that feels like they would want to work privately, reach out. I'm also creating some programs for people that can't afford my top tier programs. Let me know what would be helpful, but I want to hear what you're going to do with what we did today, because I don't want to be in that, here's all this information. Can I tell you, on my website, there's something called the Kazlow Anchor under resources. That is a great tool that enables you to shift on the spot. So if you're feeling like you're a little stuck in anger, in fear, in anything, you can shift in seconds. I know it says that 5 or 10 seconds, but literally it's like in 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So that would be a really useful resource to go and check it out and use it. Don't just read it, practice.
Okay, I'm going to jump on there and use it myself.
I use it all the time, I got to tell you. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was so much fun. You are, I've heard you're a great podcast host, and I've got to say, I totally agree with that, and have enjoyed our time. And the questions that you've asked have been really helpful to bring out what I think is really key for your audience.
No, thank you. And I think I'll get you back on in the not too distant future, because I could talk to you for hours. And I know there's so much information that must be going around in your head that is helpful to small business owners, big business owners, entrepreneurs of all types and shapes and sizes.
That would be awesome. And we can even break down something and talk about, how this applies to branding, or how this applies to some other aspect of business, and really dive deep.
Oh, that'd be beautiful. Yeah, let's do that. After we get off this, I will, in the next couple of days, we'll organize another time, and we'll talk about branding, because I think that's a big topic that we need to touch on. So, Dr. K,
perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So how cool was that? Dr. K, once again, thank you for sharing all that information. And there's two things that really struck home to me. One was, it's not just a fear of failure. It is the fear of success can also be holding people back. And who would think the thought of actually being successful could be holding you back or causing resistance some way in your life? But the other part I thought was really cool, because Dr. K works with the top 1% of entrepreneurs and business owners like in New York City. It's good to know that they face the same problems that we do. They just seem to do things a little bit better in a good way, and sometimes better also in a negative way, which I thought was great to know. So my guest next week is Donna Patani. Now, Donna is a lawyer based in Cairns, and the title of next week's podcast is going to be called Don't Take a Knife to a Gunfight. And we're talking about the difference between having a business name and having trademarks. So we're really going to be talking a lot about protecting your intellectual property. Here's a little snippet from next week's show.
And I always say to people, look, in order to get registered as a trademark, it has to be what's called inherently distinctive. So there has to be something about it that's unique. So don't use anything descriptive. If it's what are you and what do you do or sell, it'll be too descriptive and you won't achieve trademark registration. So make sure it's a bit quirky. Once you know you've got a quirky one, you can register even if you're not trading. So you can file your application, and so long as at the time of you filing your application, you are using or you intend to use your mark, the application will be allowed. And then on the back end of that intention can only last so long. So there are options under the trademarks legislation for someone to remove a mark for non-use. So if it has been 5 years from your filing date and it hasn't been used, a third party, anyone, I could come, even if I'm not using it, I can come over and request that registration be removed because it hasn't been used.
If you're a small business owner and you do have some form of IP, you may not even realize you have IP, is you need to tune in and listen to Donna next week talking about trademarks and protecting your intellectual property. If you're not protecting it, you are crazy. Before I leave you, if you have any thoughts after listening to this particular podcast episode, love to hear from you. You can leave comments on my website, tysonfranklin.com, or you can reach out to me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Just look for Tyson E. Franklin. And if you're enjoying this podcast, like I always say, just share it with people. Let people know that this podcast exists. It's aimed at small business people. So if you know people who are in small business, I know that they're going to learn something from every episode. That is my goal. Okay, that's all from me this week. Take care of yourselves, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.